Well, okay. Now, the thing about fixed income attribution compared to other areas of performance measurement often appears to be that people regard it as rocket science. For some reason, people think, oh, I can do performance measurement, I can do Brinson asset allocation. But when it gets down to using bond mathematics, people tend to think it's all terribly complicated and rather out of their grasp. Now, you clearly don't think this because you've come on this course today. But what I want to show is that, in fact, it's not rocket science. And there are quite a lot of quite simple tricks and approaches which will actually make the system, well, I hope will make the field actually rather straightforward. Now, what I'm aiming for is, well, this is a picture of Sherlock Holmes and Watson from one of the early publications where it came out. Now, if you've read the Sherlock Holmes stories, you may recall that Watson's always saying, gee, that's amazing. How did you work that out from just a few clues? And then Holmes goes through the chain of reasoning that leads him to a conclusion. And then Watson says, oh, that was easy. I could have seen that. At which point Holmes rolls his eyes and says, no, you couldn't, and goes off and smokes a pipe or something. What I'd like to do in the course is give you the same sort of confidence that you can see that when you apply a few simple tricks to attribution and bond mathematics, it all becomes clear. And in fact, if you can walk away from this course thinking, hang on, that wasn't so hard at all, then I'll be very pleased. And I have had that quite a few times when giving this course before. People come to me afterwards and say, hang on, I actually understand it. I thought it was hard, but it's not. That's the result I want. A slide anyway that shows you what you should hope to gain out of the course. How attribution works, what value it adds, and that's actually a lot more than you might think just by if you're starting out. It actually shines it's a very useful way to see all details of how the investment process works. I'll be talking about attribution reports from commercial systems. Now, I don't actually have any fact set or port reports to show to you, but I can certainly talk about the systems as I've been working with all of them quite recently. In fact, recently I did a major review for Aberdeen Standard on the pros and cons of fact set against port, which was actually very useful. It showed a lot of which bits worked and which ones didn't. And lastly, I'll talk about how to present attribution results. Now, of course, attribution is a very useful tool and lots of people want to have a piece of it. Now, to actually make it useful, you might want to think about how to present the results in the most successful way. For example, your front office is going to want something quite different to your marketing people, even though essentially you're looking at the same portfolio. And there's lots of ways you can simplify or roll results together to actually help you do that. So let me talk you through what we're going to be looking at in the next 2 days. First of all, quick look at attribution, mostly fixed income, but we do cover equity attribution as well, because the standard Brinson models actually feed into a lot of the later content where we start using the same contents, the same ideas about overweighting or underweighting particular sectors. And of course, that's how the standard Brinson model works. Now, just to give you a quick sneak preview of what we're talking about, in Brinson, you measure the returns made by overweighting or underweighting market sectors. In things like duration allocation, you measure returns made by overweighting or underweighting market risk across various market sectors. There's actually very close parallels between the Brinson models and some of the more advanced fixed income models that I'll be talking about. We also cover things like risk attribution for tracking error. For example, you might measure the tracking error of your portfolio against a benchmark. What you can do, and I'll show you a very nice way to do this, is to decompose that tracking error into contributions from different sources of risk. So you can see, for example, if some risks are counteracting other risks. And that's a very useful tool. And the same applies to things like value at risk. We move on to yield curves attribution, which are actually quite important. How you build them, how you measure changes in them, and how that feeds back into an attribution analysis. We'll look at attribution on particular security types. Now, most of what I talk about initially will be about looking at bonds, but of course there's a lot of other types of security out there. Money market securities, inflation securities, things like derivatives, and we'll try and cover most of those and show any tricks and wrinkles you might need to run attribution on each of these asset types. And last of all, working with benchmarks. This is always a very heavy area, and it can be one of the big obstacles when you start doing attribution, because fixed income benchmark can be very, very large. The Barclays Global Ag is about, I think it's about 17,000 bonds, and there's some muni indices in the US which are up to 50,000 bonds. So it's very handy to have some tricks to be able to handle these.